ready to go. So, I've been making stories since I was really little, like probably even 3 years old, and I feel like it's something I just do automatically, kind of like spiders, like they just make webs, like they just do it. Um, so, I feel like stories have always been the way that I process information and express myself and just get everything together. Um, I'd say that I'm also driven by, I guess, like messages. Like there's some stuff that I want to share because I want to share my message or I want to share this experience I had or this feeling I had with other people. But also at the same time, I get really shy about sharing my stuff. So it's kind of a back and forth.
And it's kind of always been that way that you want to share and express these stories and whatnot, and you have these like you know these messages from inside yourself that you want to get out there, but yeah, that can be really vulnerable and stuff, and I just seriously freaking applaud you for like doing that, even though it can be really hard sometimes.
Yeah, I get like worried that I'm gonna make something embarrassing and uh, share it. But I guess that's like the risk you have to take when you're sharing your stuff with people. For creating, I feel like my biggest struggle is motivation and inspiration. Like even if I do make stuff like all the time, just automatically, sometimes I don't really have fun doing it. And like recently, I'm like, I have depression, and I think sometimes it affects the way that I get engaged in things. Like sometimes I can't really feel connected to what I'm making, even though I want to. And I also think that I'm a perfectionist. Like I'm very hard on myself with the stuff I make. Like if I record something, I'll be like, there's a background noise, or I didn't hit that note right, and kind of just go through all this stuff. Or if I'm like writing something, I'll be like, are these characters any good? Like it's I just have a lot of self doubt, and I don't know. I feel like it's probably just nostalgia, but sometimes I feel like I used to be more creative than I am now, or I used to have more passion. This is passage one. The other workers had gone home, and so he was in the office counting the till alone. Once he was done, he went into the back room and put the money in the safe. When he emerged again, there was someone standing by the register. He hadn't heard the sliding doors open at all. "We're closed," he said. The stranger said nothing. He slowly recognized the sling bag, the tattered rags, the large, lifeless eyes. "Did you find your mother?" he asked. They still didn't say anything. He wasn't sure if they had even heard him. Then they spoke, barely audible, unintelligible. He stepped closer. "Come again?" More mumbling, almost a whisper. He took another step. "One more time?" That was all Steelka needed. They grabbed his shoulder with one hand and with the other brandished the knife and plunged it into his stomach. There was a noise like the breath leaving his lungs. They pulled the knife out and the body fell backward onto the floor. They stood there staring at their work, catching their breath like they had just run a marathon, staring at the blood pooling. Then they stepped over him and proceeded further into the store, toward the beer cave. This is passage 2. Her graying hair was tied back. On her head was an elaborate crown with two limbs that arched out like horns, connecting to make a V shape at her brow. At her throat were gemstones, rich blues, reds, and purples, which you could hear click together when she moved. Her face was at the same time maternal, aristocratic, and businesslike. Her eyes were a beautiful, prying pale green.
How's it going? I am a graffiti writer from Austin, and gonna answer some questions. Growing up in Austin, I was surrounded by art. I was um, I was raised by two artists, mostly musical artists, but still, nonetheless, I was kind of raised to explore my creative side and what I can do with that. Discipline, doing it every day. I am a world-class procrastinator. Um, doesn't stop me from like doing it, but I could definitely do it more. I think my biggest struggle is making myself do it when I don't want to. Yeah. Well, like I said, I was surrounded by creative people. And walking down the street every day, seeing different types of street art from murals to full-on graffiti pieces and weird, sketchy alleyways. That was my shit, man. I loved it. Um, yeah.
Absolutely. Man, yeah, I remember growing up and, like, dribs everywhere and stuff, and
Sure.
always had me sticking my head out the window and stuff. Let's see, is there anything else that you want to share with people or have to say?
Um, yeah. Just keep doing it. Never stop. Um, it's the only way to keep it alive.
In general, I would describe my sound as being ambient and sound music. And anytime that it makes sense, it's just barely making sense. And I think that is a lot of my personality. I have troubles communicating at times, but I do my best to work and find love and servitude and compassion, and that is my strong suit for sure. One of my biggest struggles has to be approaching myself with patience, because every time I open up the book, it feels like dusting off, blowing open, looking through the pages, all crinkly, and a lot of my music feels like a collage that I piece together, and that can be very tricky when all the pieces are everywhere. And that's a big struggle with my music, especially when things break, which is often. And I will not always maintain my instruments to the best condition, although I'm working on that. And I think that a lot of my trouble stems from patience and knowing when to store information and not just let it float away, so it's difficult to find. Some of my favorite techniques are just exploring the world with my sounds in mind, like keeping a segment or a loop going and stepping on leaves and knocking on hollow objects and letting the tempo of my step guide me, and then coming home and putting in those little squeaks and inorganic/organic fading in between sounds that I feel that synthesizers can really make and produce. And I love the sound of string instruments, and so I try to incorporate something like that, something plucky or something harmonic. And drums and piano have to be like almost interchangeable in my mind. There's this sort of up down like thing I've always seen since I was a kid, where you could memorize a sound or a melody because it's going up or down relative from a starting position, like kind of like notation, but just really, really simplified. And drums and piano have that in common, that when you're going up, it's like the hi-hat. When you're going down, it's like the bass drum. And hearing how that works in nature is really fun. It definitely has this fishbowl effect where as you're younger, like, you go to school with these people who around you, they're like absolute legends, like people who you will look up to and they will look up to you, and there will be this sort of like that thing when you're a kid where you can see everyone around you growing up and forming their shape. And it's really special to be someone in Austin, seeing other people grow and just like go wild with their creativity because they have the ability to connect with people. How could I let myself win? My skin, my ego's growing thin like string. A ring would make you smile. I had everyone in my fingertips. I pushed the buttons, I steered the ship. What the hell happened to me? In my curiosity, my love, my mom, my cats. It's true, I never felt free. Instead, I bled and gave into the world around me. I knew it's true that people never change, but you and me, well, they will never know. Backseat Cadillac rolling through my compound, red lights withdrawn, rolling on the wet ground, sunrise and sundown, creeping up my window like ivy and blood flow, new wounds where skin grows, crack back, hallucinate, broke, glow, stink, intoxicate, from the floor to the waves to the empty space, spinning in from yesterday, to random man with a wolf's tail, purse your lips and then inhale, flip a gram and then skip scales, where's it at, cause I don't feel thrilled.